You're doing.
I can also read the volume.
So, yes, why? He doesn't apply.
And just click on
Yeah, just
which one?
just over here to advance.
Okay. So the mouse, basically.
Yeah, inshallah. Yes. جاهز إن شاء الله.
حط بسم الله. لا هذه
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Jazakallahu khairan to all of you for coming. We are in our final Ramadan session for 2024. We hope that inshallah the previous talks were beneficial to you. And we also ask that inshallah during the month of Ramadan, if Laylatul Qadr had passed, may Allah accept your ibadah during these nights. And inshallah if Laylatul Qadr is to come, may Allah give us the strength, the energy, and the ability to make the most of it, inshallah. So to give a quick recap of our previous events before we go ahead and jump into it, we covered 3 events that happened during the month of Ramadan. So the Battle of Badr, Fath Mecca, and the Battle of Ain Jalut. And we highlighted specifically that Ramadan is a month of action. And we also gave specifically parallels to the genocide of our Muslim brothers and sisters in Gaza. And it's meant to be something that we think about our condition of Muslims in Gaza. So we learned from the first talk from Dr. Uthman Omarji of the psycho-spiritual education of the Muslims in Medina and how they were trained to think of themselves collectively and how they were trained to fight in the cause of Allah. We also saw the intentionality of the Prophet ﷺ in his Ramadan in conducting Ghazawat. And we also learned that Muslims are required to plan and required to strategize, but ultimately it's in the capacity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to dictate the outcome. We also learned from the second talk by Brother Iyad Hilal about the liberation of Mecca. And we learned about the Prophet ﷺ's intentionality throughout the entirety of his message, from establishing the state of Medina to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah to Fath Mecca. In Dr. Muhsin's talk, we discussed the Battle of Ain Jalut, and we learned about the global Muslim connectivity, where scholars, where individuals and scholars like Qutuz, Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam thought of themselves globally as an Ummah, and were concerned with the affairs of Malik al-Gamil, were concerned with the affairs of Muslims in Syria, and actually undertook action for that sake. So, and he also took a look at some primary sources to dispel some common misconceptions. So, is it suitable to pin the fall of Baghdad on certain Shi'i collaborators, rather than looking at the global Muslim-Sunni non-action or Muslim collaboration? So now in our last event, we're actually going to pivot away from the month of Ramadan, and we're going to cover the Battle of Hittin. And this was something, even a misconception we had when we were planning this event, that we assumed that the Battle of Hittin would happen in the month of Ramadan. But we want to highlight the Muslims' collective history with regard to action for Palestine. And what better moment than our current context to think about the occupation of Palestine, the blessed lands that Allah and His Messenger have spoken about. And Palestine is the premier Ummadic cause, and it's most emblematic of our current situation. It's through Palestine that we learn about other Muslim struggles, from Syria to Kashmir to America. And Sheikh Mohammed al-Hassan Walid al-Hafidhahullah gave an important analogy, where he talked about in the fall of the Khilafah, where Muslims do not have something to unify themselves, it's actually Palestine that becomes the unifying cause for the Muslims and something that Muslims can rally around. So with us today to talk about the Battle of Hittin, thinking about that Muslim collective history, we have with us Brother Mohammed Hannini, who holds a bachelor's in history and a master's in Islamic sciences with a focus in Islamic contracts. Many of you know him as an active community member in New York, New Jersey, and most recently North Carolina, the Raleigh community. So without further ado, inshallah, we'll turn it to Brother Mohammed.
Allah jazaak khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. When we talk about the Battle of Hittin, the Battle of Hittin actually took place over the duration of 2 days. But the main work that happened was to get to the point of Hittin. The difficult tasks were actually getting to the point where to enable Muslims to get to that point where they can actually defeat the Crusaders and liberate Palestine, Bayt al-Maqdis specifically. So most of the presentation, inshallah ta'ala, today will be about what led to Hittin. How did the Muslims come to that point? How did Salah ad-Din emerge? How was he able to do what he was, what he accomplished? And that, by the way, as often, the most serious work is the one that's not visible, the one that you do not see the end result of it. But at the end of the day, without it, you would not have achieved your goal. So to start, I need to put some type of context for the Battle of Hittin, how the situation of the Muslims were or was, who were the most active powers in the region, what were their agendas, what were their problems. And this is where we're going to start with, the powers in the area. And of course, now I'm picking an era, which is the era of the Crusaders, and even that era, we'll talk about it later on, about whether that era is actually the right way to frame the Crusaders. But it's to say that I need to pick a time frame. It's history. It's intertwined. There are connections with events, cause and effects, correlations, etc., etc. So we need to pick an era where we can say, okay, this is where we're going to start, and that is going to be the Crusade era. So let's look at that time and see the existing powers that were in the region at that time. The first, of course, was the Abbasid Khilafah. The Abbasid Khilafah, and I need to go quickly because of the vastness of the subject, but the Abbasid Khilafah was extremely weak, to the point where actually their power did not go beyond Baghdad and the adjacent areas to it. The Khulafa, the Caliphs, one after the other, they were actually in the hands of the Umara, the leaders or the people who had power. And most of them were at some point from the Buhayyin, the Shia, Alawite Shia, who were in that. And there was a saying that they were Zaydis, but they were Shia. And of course, the Khilafah al-Abbasiyya is Sunni Khilafah. So they controlled the treasury, they controlled the armies, they controlled the political decisions. And the Khalifa's job was really to rubber stamp whatever they came up with. There were many fitnas, many kind of problems between the Sunnah and the Shia in Baghdad. And the Shia, of course, supported the Fatimid Khilafah in Egypt and some areas in Bilad al-Sham, including Bayt al-Maqdis, which was under the Fatimids. But they sided with them, and they were working for the interest of the Fatimids. So, and they tried to actually overthrow the Sultan in Baghdad and raising the flags of the Fatimids, in Baghdad, in the capital. You can imagine, you're not talking about the peripheries or the outer skirts. You're talking about in the capital of the Khilafah. They were raising the flags of the Fatimids, and calling for the removal of the Abbasids. Now, of course, that prompted the Khalifa to Al-Abbasi to ask for the help from the Seljuks, and we'll talk about the Seljuks in a minute. But he asked for the help of them, and under the leadership of Toghr al-Bek, he actually quelled the uprising, and he protected the throne of the Khilafah, so to speak. But just to give you an impression or an idea also about the Seljuks, they're not just, and we'll talk about where they emerged from in just 1 minute, but they did not just quell the fitna or the plot against the Abbasid Khilafah, but they also expanded, and they took over whatever remained from the land of Faris, in Persia. They went beyond, to the Mesopotamia, and which is now Iraq, Syria, Turkey region. So they took over whatever they could take over at that time, and they were actually the real power behind the Abbasid Caliph. So he would not have existed without them. Who are the Seljuks? They they came to the scene in the second half of the 10th century AD. And they were, most historians say that they are from Turkmen, background, and they're named after the name of Seljuk bin Daqqaq, who was the one who unified them, and they became referred, they named after him. But they went, to what they call what the Muslims called before, what the land behind the river or over the river, and what that was in 1985 AD. And this land over the river or behind the river, this is what's called today Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the Ostans, area in Central Asia. Now, they in that country, in that region, they embraced Islam actually, following the madhab of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And Seljuk, who was their leader, he was very zealous for Islam and very protective of Muslims, to the point where he used to protect the Muslims from the Turkish tribes who were not Muslims at that time. Turkish tribes were invading or raiding the Muslims. He would fight them and became very popular, and his strength, of course, and power increased. So they took over various areas. They expanded in Iran, to destroy Bani Boy. And within 4 years, they actually expanded to the entire Persian area, and they were ready to enter into Iraq. And when they were called in by the Khalifa to come and finish the rebellion, they came in and actually they controlled Iraq as well. So they destroyed the Shia influence in Baghdad. After about 125 years of rule, of domination, they destroyed, and by that, they literally made a huge difference, in the power structure, fundamental difference in the power structure. But of course, when you are in power, also you take control. So the Khalifa called them for help, but they became also, he replaced the Shia basically with the Seljuks, with the Sunnis. And they started actually controlling the country as well, even though they were loyal to him. And they were calling, they were fighting in his name, and they were, after his interest, but they were the decision makers by the power that they had. And as Ibn Khaldun said, that the domain or the dominion of the Abbasid state kept on shrinking a little bit at a time, and the people of power expanding a little bit at a time, one by one, to the point where they surrounded Baghdad, and they became various provinces, semi-independent, and ended up really what belonged to the Khalifas of Abbasis is Baghdad and their surroundings of Dajla and Furat and the areas like this. And of course, at the same time, the Seljuks were getting stronger and stronger. So Arslan fought against the Byzantine Empire, the Emperor Dominus, in 1070 in Manzikert, or Maladkard in Arabic, and defeated them. So that put a lot of, uplifted the spirit of Muslims that we can actually defeat, the Crusades. We can actually defeat the Crusades. And that was under the leadership of the Seljuks, so they became the real masters of Asia Minor as well. Now, after the death of course, of Sultan Malik Shah, who is the son of Arslan, in 1092, you have the weakness, the struggle and the competition amongst the inheritors started. And of course, that did not only weaken the Seljuk state, but it weakened the Abbasid Khilafah as well. Because if this is the backbone and this is what supports you, once they get weak and they have disputes amongst them, that impacts you as well. The Atabegs, of course, were the concept of Atabeg where the people who take care of the children of the rulers, become entitled for some type of governorship and some type of control over this province, that province, was introduced by the Seljuks actually. Now when you have that, so even the people who are in the palaces looking after the children, became entitled for some autonomous rule somewhere, each person in their castle. That shows you how fragmented the society was, how weak the state politically and militarily it was. And so it was primed really for attack from outside. And that's part of the reason why the Crusaders succeeded. One of the two most important, Atabegs that existed, one was in Damascus and the other one was in Mosul. And Mosul was referred to, why? Because of Imad ad-Din Zengi. Imad ad-Din was actually the one who laid the ground or came up with the vision, the big idea that we need to, we need to unify the Muslims for us to defeat the Crusaders. And that became the goal that Imad al-Din Zengi, was working for. And of course, his son after that, Nur al-Din Mahmud, started working for the same goal, which also carried for a long way, as we will come to see. And the fruits were done by Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi, who was also carrying the same vision. But if it weren't for Imad al-Din Zengi laying that vision and that idea to start with, and starting the process, giving the idea that he has, that we have to unify, different regions. You have to unify Iraq with Syria, the Syrian region, plus Egypt. We have to control that from four sides, because the fourth side, the western side, would be the Mediterranean Sea, and that, we have our fleet there that can protect it. But they wanted to surround the Crusaders fully from all sides. So if it weren't for him, and if it weren't for the campaigns that were carried by his son, they would not have, Salah ad-Din would not have had the ability to actually work with it. So now you have, now we're talking about the Islamic power. And of course we have the Abbasid Khilafah, and mainly, as we said, in Baghdad. And you have the Fatimid Khilafah, that was in Egypt. And the Fatimid Khilafah was just as weak as the Abbasids. Actually, you will notice throughout the discussion that everybody was weak. Not just the Muslims in the Fatimids or the Abbasids, but also the Crusaders were weak. The Byzantine Empire was weak. All of them had problems, internal problems that affected their performance. So the Fatimid state or Khilafah, of course, it was the Shia Alawis sect of Alawism, or Ismaili, excuse me. The Ismailis that were governing Egypt. And many provinces started breaking off from the Fatimid rule, just like the Abbasids. Okay, so they had their own problems. Now, of course, they had also some economical problems where it got to the point, because of civil wars between them, got to the point where the people were eating dead animals, just to survive. Still, despite all of that, it got to the point, by the way, just the last thing, just to show how bad it was, got to the point where the Khalifa actually, the Khalifa of the Fatimid Khalifa, Al-Mustansir Billah, sold all his belongings and stayed with a straw mat, sitting on the floor on a straw mat. So, but still they were trying to expand, and they take away from the Abbasids, not just to counter the Abbasids, but also the more you expand, the more revenue, the more money that you're going to get in your coffers. So they went and they attacked Sur, and they surrounded it. But finally,
Sur?
excuse me?
Sur. In English, where is it? Liver.
Afwan?
Where is it? For the audience to know where is Sur.
It's in Syria.
Liver,
It's in the Syrian region. So they asked for the help of the Seljuks, who came, and of course they pushed the Fatimids away. Now, but they came back again, and this is what you'll see back and forth. They came back to Sur again, and they tried to attack it again. And at that time, Ibn Aqil, who was the main person who was leading the resistance against the Fatimids, died. His children were not as strong as he was, so they gave in, and they handed over. So the Fatimids continued, and they went to Saida. Saida is in Lebanon, currently in Lebanon. And they went after that to Akka in Palestine. They went again, and these are coastal cities or provinces, so they just kept on going up the coast, and they took Akka, then Jubail, then one section after the other, as I said. So they, even though they had many problems with them, something that's common amongst them was the animosity they had for the Seljuks, because they caused their failure from, expanding and taking over the Abbasid Khilafah. Now you have the third party, which is the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire, the difference between it and the, of course, the Byzantine Empire believes in it's an Eastern Orthodox Christians, different from Catholics in Western Europe. So they were, they had their problems was the constant wars with the Muslims. That's one. So they're constantly fighting Muslims. Muslims would take one place, then these people have to fight and take it back, and the other way around, which was very exhausting and very costly to them. So there were constant wars here and there, you know, but with no definitive conclusion to their endeavors. So they had a lot of problems with that. But in addition to that, they had theological problems, you know, amongst themselves, because they were Eastern Orthodox. And amongst the Eastern Orthodox, you have different people, different sects as well, that will also weaken them. Now, as far as the European, you know, Christians or in the West, the European West, those people, they campaigned against the Islamic East, you know, with their, of course, their Crusades, and they managed to settle in the area and formed 4 provinces: Raha, Antakya, Tarablis, Beit al-Maqdis. And you will find that they are all within the Syrian region, within southern Turkey. But that's the area really of the engagement so far. And of course, so when we say Beit al-Maqdis, the Jerusalem was under their control, so they also succeeded. How it started, actually, Constantine the Seventh, they decided to attack the Muslims to take back Beit al-Maqdis, which Muslims had taken a long time ago, for the time of Umar ibn Khattab. You know, so they fought the Muslims in Asia Minor. They reached Bilad al-Sham. When we say Bilad al-Sham, we're talking about the Great Syria historically. That includes Jordan, includes Palestine, includes Lebanon, and includes the current Syria as well. So all of them were known as Bilad al-Sham or Ash-Sham. So they met in Bilad al-Sham against the Abbasids, different time, and they reached actually, and they took the island of Crete. They actually took that as well. But as I said, they had many problems because they had the animosity, of course, with the Catholics. They had problems within the Eastern Orthodox Christianity as well, etc. So all of them were having problems for them. And none of them, in other words, had the superior power that were able to actually do what they wanted. And we will see even in the Crusades, the way that the Crusades were formed and the way they were executed, it was most of the time they were ill-equipped, and if it weren't for the internal problems of Muslims, they would not have won. You know, so but the idea about Beit al-Maqdis, the idea about being in Beit al-Maqdis was being formed in the minds of the Catholic Christians by when they were visiting Beit al-Maqdis for the purpose of worship or for business. But they used to go to Muslim lands, and they used to enter into those lands without anybody stopping them. So they used to go to their churches in Palestine, in Beit al-Maqdis, and the Muslims would allow them, but still that was not enough for them. So anyway, but they had the idea that, okay, this is actually, and of course the Bible talks about Beit al-Maqdis, so they felt some affiliation with it that they had to take it back. Okay, of course the church also gave them the image that the Muslims were monsters, and literally gave them physical features of Muslims that they were not human, you know, so that they think that they were fighting demons. And not only that, they called the Muslims, the church called the Muslims, that they were heretics, infidels. They are, you know, they went against the church as if, you know, Muslims were part of the church and then left it, kind of thing. So they gave them that impression. And at the same time, when they were forming that opinion, you have the Seljuks were winning against the Byzantine, you know, and then the Constantinople, which is Constantinople, became, you know, which is a spiritual place for Christians, became in the reach of Muslims. So now that atmosphere of feeling of threat and the feeling of, or giving them the emotional hype, even if it's on false basis, the emotional hype that you need to go and liberate Palestine. That was being formed as the foundation for going out, on a crusade. Of course, then Urban II, who believed in spreading Christianity, declared his intention that he wanted to free all the the Christian churches from the control of the Turks, the Muslim Turks. So what was anybody who went on these campaigns, Orban gave them the promise of course, forgiveness. We know, Sukuk al-Ghufran, that you will be forgiven, document that you'll be forgiven, and you will be rewarded. So you from the east. So in other words, if you conquer a place, you will be given some lands, you'll be giving money from it, you'll be giving whatever. And of course, they refer to that region as the region of land, of milk and honey. So it's filled with richness, and of course that prompted the poor and miserable people to actually go and seek help, or seek dominance and fortune elsewhere. So the first campaign, did not even really reach far, did not even get to the region of the intended region. On the way, so in other words, the commoners and anybody who wanted to do better, figured because you'll be forgiven from taxes, you will get some money, you will be forgiven, so you have nothing to lose. These people on the way, they started actually rampaging through villages, killing even Christians like them, raping, pillaging, etc., etc. So that was the first failure. The second, of course, there was a second attempt after that, which was with the level of the people, the barons and the people who were in control of Europe. And it was really more materialistically based than religious. But again, the Seljuks were busy with their own problems, that actually Antakya, because it became the first city that the Crusaders entered, and they and put a stronghold in it. And of course, from Antakya, they went and they entered into Palestine, into Jerusalem. And once they entered it, they killed about 100,000 people in gruesome wars. And even their books describe the kind of bloodshed that was done against mostly civilians, against mostly women, children, etc. I mean, they would kill women, children in the arms of their mothers. They would, all the disgusting stuff. But it was a ruthless campaign, which was the first crusade in 1099. It lasted for 3 years, and they made the Masjid al-Aqsa as a stable for their horses, and they put the cross. They put the cross on top of Qubbat al-Sakhra. And built, of course, their Christian settlements and areas of worship, etc. And they brought Christians from France and others to live in Bayt al-Maqdis, around 1,100. Does it sound familiar? But this is what they actually did. And just compare it, when we said that they were able to go in and worship under the Muslim rule, were unhindered. And they're the most holiest churches they have, the Resurrection Church, which was one of the hot items for them to rally the people we need to go liberate it. It's been under the rule of Muslims since God knows when, and actually the Muslims have the keys to it. The Muslims are the ones who open it every day and close it for the Christians to come and pray in it. We did not destroy it. Even the church in Gaza, the oldest church in that region, it lived amongst Muslims, and non-Muslim Christians were going to that, to that place, worshiping without any problems. Nobody. But that's the idea of when they take control, when Muslims take control. And history is a good judge to see from a practical perspective, not just a hukum shari, Islamic rule, haram and halal. So with the existence of the provinces, they were able to actually expand. So they reached Asqalan, which is in Palestine. They reached Tarablis, countries, European countries were joining, and they were joining in the campaign, like Italy, like Venice. But they were haggling over the terms. So this is to say what? The Crusades, yes, religion had a part to play in it, but it was not the only thing. Actually, most of it was political and economic. Most of it was related to how much we can get. As the Venetian people would say, we are merchants first and then Christians. So it was everything. How much will you pay me? And you will see it even that seeped into the mindset of Muslims, even in defending against the Crusades. If you want me to protect this area, you pay me this much, and that was the mindset at that time. Now, just a last note: when did the Crusades start? The last note on this point, because we're talking about the first crusade in 1095, and it ended in 12 something. But actually, some people contest that, like Salabi and other historians. They contest that because they tell you that actually the campaign started from the inception of Islam. Once the Islamic State was established, then you have the battles of Yarmouk and the battles of several battles that took place, like the Wamt al-Jandal, that is Salasil, Mu'ta, Tabuk. All of them actually were against the Byzantine Empire. And therefore, what is happening now at the time of the Western Europe was just a continuation of what started then. So, but for our purposes, we stuck to the one that's more agreed upon, but it is definitely, they raise some good points. And we'll talk about whether actually the Crusades still going on today when we come to it, inshallah ta'ala, towards the end. Okay. So let's talk about the laying the foundation for liberation. And we can, as I mentioned before, you have two people that you really have to acknowledge their abilities. One is Imad al-Din Zengi. And Imad al-Din Zengi, of course, one from the Seljuks. And he was the ruler of Mosul. And his goal, his ultimate goal, one track minded, was we need to end the Crusaders from the Muslim world. We need to remove them. But realizing that Mosul alone is not going to be able to cut it, because you need, even if you unify it with Aleppo, Halab, or with other provinces, it's still not enough. And especially nobody responded, not nobody, but mostly they did nothing. Those people who were in control, autonomous control of the region, they did not respond to him positively when he called for unity and called for basically surrender your power so we can all march against the Crusades. Like Damascus, for example, they refused, and they insisted that they are going to renew their treaties with the Crusaders. But wait, you are not a country. You're not the ruler of you are a ruler of a province. By what right do you step the Khalifa, who is the ruler, and you make treaties, foreign treaties, with the enemies of the state, but that was the case. So they refused to do that because they had treaties with the Crusaders related to water and trade. Okay, and of course you will find that whenever they had a dispute amongst them, they had no problem in calling upon the Crusaders. So automatically they would form an alliance. They will promise them with a lot of money. We'll give you this land, this land, this land, if you keep us in power. That was something that is a standard operation procedure. So Imad al-Din started to liberate. It started planning for the liberation of Al-Roha, the county of Edessa, as they call it. And because it was all the way up in the north and it was semi-isolated, so it's going to be difficult to rescue it by the Crusaders. So sure enough, in 1144, he actually went into the county of Edessa and he liberated it, and he took it back to the fold of Islam. And of course, that was caused the Muslims a huge relief and confidence again that we can succeed. We can do something that is positive. And of course, it ignited or the spirit of jihad in the people. But he did not live long. He died, but to be replaced by his son Nuruddin Mahmud. And his son actually was more religious than his father. His father was a military man, the man of the hour, a politician, a statesman. But his son was on top of it, had much deeper connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least as the reports, talk about him. That and he was, of course, sincere to the same goal. So he was somebody who would do a qiyam and who was very content with little, etc. And he viewed his way to al-akhirah, to the hereafter, through jihad. So we are going to do jihad in against the Crusaders, and that's the way that you are going to enter into Jannah. That was his idea. So that was the first loss of the Crusaders, and of course that made the Pope extremely angry. So in 1148, the Crusaders again came and surrounded Damascus to prevent Nuruddin Mahmud from entering it and bringing it to the fold, because the more you bring in provinces, areas, the stronger that you become. But again, it failed. And why it failed? Because of the problems that not because of the strength of the Muslims or the Seljuks or the Abbasids, but because of the weaknesses they had on the Christian side, on the Crusader side. Because the Crusaders who were coming from Europe considered the local Christians as agents for Muslims. You live amongst them, you must be you're their lackeys kind of speech. So the disagreement was obvious. So the army failed and they went back to where they came from. Okay, so that failed. And now in Damascus, the public actually sent a letter to Nuruddin Mahmud asking him, come and take over Damascus. Because they see what he's after. They see what he's able to accomplish versus somebody who is colliding, or who's cooperating with the enemies of the Muslims. And now we talk about Salah ad-Din and the Crusades. As we mentioned, that they started attacking, at least in that era, in 1095, and they established their 4 provinces. Now, the Muslims' response, of course, as we mentioned, was to start forming that Islamic front, unified Islamic front, that Imad ad-Din Zengi laid out the seeds for, and his son Mahmud, Nuruddin Mahmud nourished. So he was able to bring the Syrian region with Iraq, meaning what? He had the control of Sham and Iraq, and all he wanted was Egypt so that he would finish the circle. And that, of course, Egypt not only strategically located, but it's also because of the Nile, because of the richness of Egypt, and I cannot resist. But now it's beyond poor. But historically, Egypt was always known to be of richness and goodness in it. So Salah ad-Din, when we talk about Salah ad-Din, or Saladin as they refer to him in English, and we'll talk about who he is, he did not come from a vacuum. And this is something that, we have this romantic view of Salah ad-Din as if just the young hero who just showed up, unified Muslims and did all kinds of, and actually, if you read his history, it was not like that. Salah ad-Din was able to succeed because of certain environment that was in place. And Salah ad-Din was not alone. There were other people who were helping him throughout the process on a leadership level. But without that ground, without that fertile ground for him to do his work, he would not have been able to succeed. And it is important because if we talk about now, and even the Westerners talk about how Muslims look for Salah ad-Din. Yes, we look for Salah ad-Din, but somehow some of us look at him as this like a Superman kind of thing. coming an angel kind of thing. Allah Ta'ala will send him down and he has his special powers. That's not the way Allah Ta'ala put his system in the world. So there has to be an environment that needs to be created for a Salah ad-Din to appear, but without it, actually, we are going to continue where we are, and we'll discuss this inshallah ta'ala later on. So Salah ad-Din actually is, if you notice, Nur ad-Din, Imad ad-Din, Salah ad-Din, Asad ad-Din, this is the habit of the people at the era at that time, of naming themselves. So actually Salah ad-Din's name was Yusuf, but his nickname was Salah ad-Din, like Imad ad-Din or like Nur ad-Din, Mahmud. Nur ad-Din is the title that, or the nickname that was given to him. That is not his name. His Salah ad-Din, his name was Yusuf bin Ayyub bin Shadi. Most historians say that he's Kurdish in origin, and his father was Najmuddin. Najmuddin, again, that's not his name. Ayyub Asad, Ayyub, and the uncle of Salah ad-Din was Asad ad-Din Sherko, who was also very close to Salah ad-Din and his father. Salah ad-Din's father, Ayyub, and Asad ad-Din, they worked for a person called Mashahid ad-Din Baruz al-Khadim. And when he saw that they were actually loyal and they're hardworking, etc., so he gave them the position to integrate, to keep the castle, basically to protect the castle. But there was some circumstances. Najmuddin Ayyub had to leave, and where did he go? He took his family to Mosul, to Imad ad-Din Zengi, and that's how Salah ad-Din, the son, comes in touch with Imad ad-Din Zengi and his son Nur ad-Din Mahmud. So his father had to leave from one place, and he went to from Tikrit, and he went to Mosul. So Imad ad-Din Zengi treated them well, and they started working for him actually. And Imad ad-Din Zengi gave Najmuddin Ayyub also the Ba'labak to stay with it. Imad ad-Din Zengi dies in 1146. His son comes and replaces him. And Najmuddin, Ayyub was still in Ba'labak, but Nur ad-Din asked him basically to leave Ba'labak and he will give him some province in Damascus. Again, because Nur ad-Din wanted Damascus, wanted to solidify his position, but he wanted Ba'labak as well because it's of its location. Asad ad-Din Sherko, who was a very good general, joined Nur ad-Din Mahmud, and he became very close to him and gave him areas in Hams and Al-Rahban. If you notice this all the time, they do not just become close and let's say, I give you a leadership position, but also I give you a place to rule. And that was the custom of the time. Salah ad-Din's now as a personality, as a character. Salah ad-Din actually was somebody who was a consistent in Salat al-Jama'ah. He was a Shafi'i in Madhab, and he studied Islam with some of the ulama and some of the judges who were there. He liked listening to Quran al-Kareem, was very generous. So he had personal traits, rahimahullah, that made him also different. When he died, he did not leave a house or a property that he owned. He had nothing, in some reports that he left 1 dinar and something like 28 dirhams, and minimal work for inheritance for somebody who was in his position when he died. But he did not leave any land, whether it was farmed or not farmed. Even the Hajj, he was not able to perform al-Hajj, partially because of financial reasons, part of it because partially was also because he was busy with the jihad campaigns all the time. But he did not perform al-Hajj. And he was, of course, as we all know, an outstanding military man. And of course that skill was developed under the guidance of his uncle, Asad ad-Din, Sherko, who taught him. Now let's talk about securing Egypt. And this is what where the most of the fight happens, it's about Egypt. How am I doing time? It's about Egypt. So the Crusader, the Nur ad-Din Mahmud wanted Egypt, and the Crusaders wanted Egypt as well, because that enables them to, to not to be surrounded by all sides. So that was the only place. And Godfrey Bullion actually put a plan to take over Egypt, but he was killed. And there was a plan, a meeting that took place between the Crusaders and the Khalifa al-Fatimi, al-Musta'li billah, and his minister, and they met that, and they agreed to help the Crusaders. Look at this, and these are the Fatimids, to help the Crusaders come into, the land, to destroy the Seljuks, who are threatening to attack Egypt. Now, and what is the exchange of that? So that they will be given Syria, or the northern parts of Syria, including Antakya, and the Fatimids would keep the lower or the southern parts, including Beit al-Maqdis. And so those were kind of deals. So that to put a barrier between Egypt and the Seljuks, they would bring the Crusaders, put them between them, so that they're to protect their positions. Whether you're a Shi'i, Sunni, I don't know what kind of mind that would actually do this to your land. I mean, still, the Shia and the Sunni are closer than the Crusader who's coming, because then here's the thing. You bring the Crusader today, he'll help you until he puts out, takes out your enemy, and then you'll be the next in line. It is not that you're going to be, friends forever, because they have a mission. That's what they're there in the region. So you would be the next in line. But of course, they did not, and you will find this short-sightedness existing all the time. Amalek wanted to attack Egypt, and that was the king of Beit al-Maqdis, the Jerusalem. So he wanted to go to Egypt. And of course, who rushed asking for the Seljuks, for Nur ad-Din Mahmud to help? It was the minister Shawar. And minister actually, once he asked for the help, promising him 1/3 of the revenue of Egypt will be given to him, and he will declare loyalty to him if he takes him back to the rule. Because there was a debate, not a debate, a fight, problems, conflict between Shawar and the chief of staff on those days of the palace. So he, so he rushed to the help of, asking for the help of Nur ad-Din. Nur ad-Din rushed for the opportunity because he wanted a foothold in Egypt. So he took the offer, and he went there to fight the Crusaders. So he ordered a huge army to be placed under his uncle's command, and who took in turn Salah ad-Din with him. And they went back with Shawar, with the guy who asked him for help. And of course, once the Muslims entered, Shiroko won against the rebellion against Shawar. But it's still, when of course, Shawar never paid the money, and decided that, that he's not going to do it. At that time, so now you have the Crusaders and the Muslim, and the Seljuks are about to fight in Egypt. He heard that actually Nur ad-Din Mahmud was attacking the provinces that belong to the Crusaders up in their Syrian region. So the king of the Beit al-Maqdis decided that maybe I'll lose Jerusalem as well. So he held the treaty with the Shiroko, and basically both parties went back to their bases, and that was let's say a draw. Then the second campaign started in 1167. So both of them still wanted to go back in Egypt for different reasons. The Crusaders wanted a foothold so that they can control the area, not to be, boxed in. And of course, the opposite is what the Nur al-Din Mahmud wanted. So by the way, all of this, the campaigns that Nur al-Din Mahmud was doing, the fights against the Crusaders, they were going on with the blessing of the Khalifa al-Abbasi. And he was encouraging any activity against the Crusaders and against the Fatimids, gives his blessings for it. So the people complained. And who complained this time? It was actually the complaint of the Khalifa of the Fatimids, complaining that shower is abusive. So basically asking for the help. And Nur al-Din, of course, was angry with shower anyway because he cheated him of the money. So he decided to send an army and go attack Egypt. So shower at the same time he called for help from the Crusaders. The Crusaders came, and again, once and this is the tactic that Nur al-Din Mahmud was doing. He would send the army to Egypt, and now you have the spotlight is there. He would start attacking on the back end, attacking the provinces that belong to the to the Crusaders, and that's how they automatically they become afraid of losing what the territories that they had. They turn back. So actually, because of this, they had a treaty with Asad-ud-Din, and they gave him 500,000 dinars with the understanding that neither party is going to stay in Egypt. However, they had a secret agreement, the Crusades, with Shower, that will leave some troops in the region so that they can protect you. In 1169, again, the Crusades came because they had a foothold, and they're saying, now we have people inside, we know the country, we know what to do. So they came again, and of course they were assisted by some Egyptian traitors who betrayed their country with them. And this time, the king of of Bayt al-Maqdis had a plan, or had an agreement with the Byzantine Empire, to come and they will split the Egypt, spoils of war. So the same minister, Shower, reached out to Nur al-Din Mahmud asking him for help against him. It's over and over and over, But bottom line is that the Muslims came, the Seljuks came, and for the sake of the time, they settled in Egypt. And of course, the Fatimid Khalifa, honored the Asad-ud-Din and the Seljuks, and he was very happy with them. So, and he appointed Asad-ud-Din Shirkuh as the minister in Egypt. Al-Wazir at that time was pretty much a ruler. I mean, you are pretty much equal to the head of state. You had a very vast. It's not like in the Western model of ruling, where you are the Awqaf minister. You are the education minister. No, actually, Wazir at that time, it was pretty much a ruler in everything. But so Asad-ud-Din became the ruler, of Egypt. Of course, the Khalifa was there, the Khalifa al-Fatimid, the Fatimid Khalifa, and when he became a minister, he did not last long. In 2 months, he passed away, So who came to replace him? Salah ad-Din. Now, this is a crucial point, because Al-Adid, who was the Khalifa, the Fatimid Khalifa, insisted to be Salah ad-Din. Okay, there are other commanders who are senior to him. No, it has to be Salah ad-Din. Not because he likes Salah ad-Din's eyes color. It's because he viewed Salah ad-Din to be young, inexperienced, and that's how I can control him. So he will do what I tell him, because at that time, Salah ad-Din was about 30 years old, or in the 30s. So he said that's how, Salah ad-Din, of course, resisted at that time. He did not want to be, to be in charge. But, the Fatimid Khalifa insisted, and now you have a Sunni Muslim, in the Fatimid Khalifa in a very huge role. And of course, when that happened, the Crusaders felt threatened because Salah ad-Din in Egypt, Salah ad-Din, who is loyal to the Abbasids, loyal to Nur ad-Din Mahmud. Salah ad-Din is in Egypt, Nur ad-Din Mahmud is in Syria. You know, the Abbasids are in Baghdad. So now they feel that things are getting too tight for them, so they felt threatened. So again, the king of Jerusalem decided, Bayt al-Maqdis decided, asked for help from the Europeans, but they refused. And again, the Byzantines came to step in. Now, they went through a severe battle, actually, where it ended up that actually Salah ad-Din defeated the Crusades in that area. You know, Al-Adid, when that gave the boost to Salah ad-Din, started getting worried. Al-Adid, the Khalifa, the Fatimid Khalifa, so he sent a letter to Nur ad-Din Mahmud saying, take your troops and leave. So Nur ad-Din Mahmud apologized, saying, sorry, we cannot do that because we need to secure Egypt in case the Crusaders came back. Everybody knows why they're doing it. Al-Adid doesn't want them to get to rule, so they did not leave. And Salah ad-Din took that as a basis where now we defeated them once, they started attacking the Crusaders and their centers, so he attacked Ramla, Asqalan, Gaza. All of these areas are in Palestine. So basically the campaign between the Crusades and the Byzantines failed again. And now we're talking about yes. So that actually started, Salah ad-Din got the order from Nur ad-Din Mahmud, basically overthrow the Khalifa of the Fatimids. How do you overthrow him? So first of all, Salah ad-Din, and it has to be done right now. Salah ad-Din took him about a year until that actually happened. So first of all, he depleted the money from the treasury by asking the Al-Adid, give me some more money. I need more food. I need more this. I need more that. And he would give them, to the point where it got that he had one horse. He told him, I need the horse. So he actually took the horse from him. And the guy, sat again on a straw mat saying, I have nothing. Then Salah ad-Din ordered one of the imams to give khutbah al-Jum'ah. And in khutbah al-Jum'ah, they used to make dua for the Khalifa. You have to. And that shows the loyalty. So in that, instead of making the dua to the Fatimid Khalifa, they made dua to the Abbasid Khalifa and Nur ad-Din Mahmud, the Seljuks. But that was in only one masjid, in the grand masjid, but not the other masajid, not the other mosques. So he was waiting for somebody to object. Nobody objected. So next day, then the next Friday, he said, okay, carry it throughout. And sure enough, the next Friday, it was carried out. Now, Al-Adid, by the way, was extremely sick. And the people did not give him any news, so he died happy. He did not know that he was actually dethroned. And now Egypt was lost from the Fatimids to the Abbasids. And of course, the Khalifa al-Abbasi was extremely happy. And just like that's the practice of Salah ad-Din in Egypt, the first thing that he did, he started building hospitals, building Islamic schools, Sunni Islamic schools, and closing the Shia, the Fatimid, Ismaili sect, schools. Built two schools. One is Madhabi, one is Shafi'i, and the other one is Maliki. Built many hospitals and started fixing the roads and fixing insha'Allah. So fixing the country basically to allow for resisting any new campaign. And by that, by the way, Soon enough, Nur ad-Din Mahmud actually dies as well. But when Salah ad-Din did this, he actually unified the Islamic Khilafah again. It became one central authority, one central ruler, and everybody is loyal to that ruler. The Abbasids, yes, because the Fatimids were gone. So what is important, and because I'm running out of time, what is important, and this is something, this is the difficulty with history. You skip and you start saying, okay, there is a missing link in what the guy is talking about. But if you go through each one of them, really, we will have another day or two just of talking about what actually happened. So please excuse me, I'm sort of hopping around here. But just to emphasize the things that we want to emphasize, throughout his campaigns against the Crusaders, Salah ad-Din, it was always what they call munawashat, like skirmishes here and there, fights here and there. He would lose some, he would win some. So for example, he was defeated in Ramla. The Crusaders, went and surrounded Hama. But it's still. Those skirmishes were just taking place. There was no all-out war against them. It was just here and there. Okay, and finally, of course, Salah ad-Din, after being defeated in Syria, and this is important to notice again, to say that this is not a miraculous process of Salah ad-Din. He was being defeated, losing some battles, winning some battles, because he had the same issues, the same problems other armies had. But finally, he went to Marji'yun, and removed the castle completely, or the Husn, and then again, Raha, and he started going town by town, province by province, to kick the Crusaders out. But in 1187, which is the year of Hittin, in 1187, in that he started actually calling all Muslims to come and do jihad. So now it means that now he's comfortable, because he's got Syria, he's got Iraq, he's got Egypt, and he's got the sea. So he's able to move on the Crusaders. And of course, at the same time, so Salah ad-Din is getting stronger and stronger, more powerful. The Crusaders are getting weak because of disputes amongst themselves as well. And so in what prompted Hittin to take place was in 1181, Arnat, he's Ronald, who was the ruler of Al-Karak. Al-Karak is a place in Jordan. And he was the ruler of Al-Karak, and he had a treaty with the Muslims that he will not oppose the caravans, Muslims caravans, going to Al-Hajj or for business. Of course, he violated that. And not only that, he talked badly about the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Salah ad-Din took an oath that he will kill him with his own hand. If he gets a hold of him, he's going to kill him with his own hand. So because of the insult to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So immediately the ships, the Muslim, under the leadership of Salah ad-Din, he appointed Husam ad-Din Lu'lu and started attacking the Crusaders' ships. So now it is expanding. And in 1187, all the Crusaders gathered around with Raymond III, the Emir of Tarablis, the leader of Tarablis, and basically they started wanting to attack the Muslims. But because the Muslims were attacking their ships, Salah ad-Din moved with 12,000 fighters and went to Tabariya. Tabariya is a lake Tabariya. It is in Palestine. And what he did, he surrounded the lake, so that he would only be able, him and his soldier would be able to drink, and attacked Tabariya, but he could not go through the castle. It seems that, my understanding is that every area, every location, every province that was under the rule, so there was the area itself, and then there is a castle. And that's where the head of the that castle or that area would be staying. So he conquered it in one night, but the castle he could not breach. So he went again to Tabariya to force the Crusaders to travel from where they are, their locations, all the way to Tabariya in the heat. And this was in Yulyo or in July, meaning in the summer in that region. And they will come thirsty, they will come tired, and of course they have no access to water, etc. So they would have the Salah ad-Din would have the edge over them. And what really worked, and he did that. So he went and he surrounded Tabariya, the lake, so that and his army is resting. And what happened that was really in his favor was in the castle, the wife of Raymond III, who was the owner of Tarablis, was in the castle. So now she is not in the hand of Salah ad-Din, but she is threatened by Salah ad-Din. Okay. So now when the Crusaders got the news, they started arguing, should we go, should we not go? Should we go to Tabariya basically to meet Salah ad-Din in battle? Or should we wait until for a different favorable time? And of course, they went with the opinion of let's go, let's do it. Okay, even though so anyway, it's just the will of Allah Ta'ala that they chose that opinion, and they actually fell in the trap that Salah ad-Din laid out. They traveled, throughout the day, and they reached that area, Tabariya. And when they reached there, they were extremely exhausted, extremely tired because of the heat and the sun. And just keep in mind the way the Crusaders dress. It's all metal. Metal reflects the sun, keeps the heat. So it was living hell inside those, armored, attires. So they were wearing that, and there's no water, etc. Not only that, at night actually Salah ad-Din did even more because they camped. And now they're thirsty, and anybody who tries to come to the lake to drink, they would be shot at with arrows and killed. So not only that, at night he actually ordered his army to turn the bushes on fire, set the bushes on fire. So the bushes, the smoke and the heat, actually the wind was blowing against, towards the Crusaders. And that carried the heat, and that carried the soot, and carried the smoke, which was just problems on top of problems. And of course, the Muslims, really beat them very badly. So the Crusaders went to the top of a hill, and they put the king's red tent, which was a symbol that the king is still there, the battle is still functioning, etc. But actually, once it got there, it collapsed. And when it collapsed, Salah ad-Din immediately did sujood al-shukr, thanking Allah Ta'ala for that. They took Muslims they took their cross, and they took the Renald in captivity. They took the king in captivity. Basically, they're all prisoners of war. Ibn al-Athir says there was so much killing and taking prisoners to the point where whoever saw the dead would have thought that there were no prisoners taken, and whoever saw the prisoners would have thought that no one was killed. Just to show you the amount of devastation that they suffered. So anyway, Salah ad-Din ordered the tent and to be erected, and he brought the king of the Crusaders, and he sat him next to him. He sat him next to him. He did not, you bring him humiliated in front of you on his knees or something like that. No, he sat him next to him. And so the king asked for water. And Salah ad-Din offered him iced water, meaning very cold water in that heat. Again, that's a sign of generosity, respect, that he's giving him something that's suitable for him. Okay, so he drank from it. Then he gave Ronald, the remaining water. Salah ad-Din said, he drank without my permission. You asked for water, I gave you water. You gave them to him. Now that symbol of, I give you water, it means I'm not going to kill you, meaning that you're safe. So now that person who attacked Muslims, attacked caravans, insulted the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did that, he was not safe. So Salah ad-Din asked, offered the man to become a Muslim. He refused, and he responded with something that was very bad. Salah ad-Din took his dagger, those like the daggers between a sword and a small dagger. He went and he cut him, his shoulder fell off. And then his soldiers, the Muslim soldiers, jumped in and finished the job. But so he killed him. And Salah ad-Din, then after that, this is all in Hittin. He has not entered Bayt al-Maqdis yet. So he went to Bayt al-Maqdis insisting to go by force. By force, it means that there is no treaty. It means you are, and because he wanted to take revenge for the 100,000 Muslims who were killed and women who were abused, etc., etc. He wanted to take revenge for that. But actually, he ended up, he entered it, but allowed the people to, first of all, those who want to leave from the Christians, leave. But you give a head tax, and it was a symbolic, something that's not really anything that's worth much. And those who were not able to afford it, he would give them from his own money. So it was, and the rulers who were there took their money with their wealth, whatever they had, the king, the gold, whatever they hoarded, they took it with them. And again, and he did not stop them. Some of the women who were the wives of the kings who got killed, etc., he had them escorted, and he gave them money to help them along the trip. I mean, that's what he did after the battle, in that. And he, of course, he went to Masjid al-Aqsa, had it cleaned, removed the cross, and he put the crescent, golden crescent on top of it. And he put the member that Imad ad-Din Zengi wanted to put in the Masjid al-Aqsa. He put the member Masjid al-Aqsa back, because at that time, as I said, it was turned into a horse barn. Okay. And now, just quickly, what was after Salah ad-Din? Because this is the end of Hittin, really. As I said, it is the whole trip, the whole effort is just getting to the point of Hittin, where you have enough unity, enough weapons, enough men, enough fighters. The circumstances are right for you to actually deliver. But Hittin itself was a small event. After Salah ad-Din, of course, Salah ad-Din passed away in 1193, and he was 56 years old. And he passed away. He was sick for about 14 days. In the last 3 days, he lost his consciousness, and those were the only 3 days that he actually did not pray in. And his Salah ad-Din, even though historically, even when he was sick, he did not pray sitting down, which is allowed if you're not able to stand, or difficult for you to stand. But Salah ad-Din, actually, that was not his habit until the last 3 days that he, and those are the 3 days that he did not stand in Salah. So later on, with treason taking place, and I don't want to, because I'm really running out of time, Frederick entered into Jerusalem with 300 knights. So I read 600 knights, but 300, 600, 1,000, there's still nothing in comparison to the 1,000 that, which means that he came feeling that he does not have to fight, and not a single drop of blood was spilled, and he took over Jerusalem again. And because now, again, the children, the inheritors of Salah ad-Din, started fighting amongst each other, and some of them, one of them, reached out to Frederick, to the Crusades, that you can come and take Jerusalem. Okay, if you help me against XYZ. So, and that's how they entered. And actually, they stopped calling Adhan al-Fajr in Al-Aqsa, because that would bother Frederick's sleep. So even Salat al-Fajr was stopped, or Adhan at least was stopped. That stayed the same way until Ibn Nasr al-Mu'addam in 1240 came and took it back. But his uncle again handed it over as an act of treason in the same year in 1240. Finally, Khwarizmiyun, who were Turkish Muslims, they took it back to the fold of Islam in 1244 and stayed under the Muslim rule until the British occupied Palestine, and later on, of course, they gave it to the Zionists to establish their state on it. Just quick comments about the some of the things that we take. One is that falsehood never lasts. Meaning, if something that is bad, something that is unfair, something that is false, that's not true. It is not going to last. Allah Ta'ala will not allow it. It might last a day or two or a year or 10 or 100, but it will not last. Because the batil, the falsehood will always go away. And that's even though Jerusalem was under the rule of the Crusaders for over 80 years, 82, some people say 88, but anyway, over 82, almost 100 years under the rule of the Crusaders, still Muslims liberated it and took it back. The main reason for the defeat the Muslims had throughout the battles was division. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us by His command, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ وَاصْبِرُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. That, and obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not dispute, do not separate, do not interfight. فَتَفْشَلُوا, you will fail. Because of this division, because of this separation, you will fail. وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, and your power will diminish. وَاصْبِرُوا, and be patient. Indeed, Allah Ta'ala is with the patient. You will see it, throughout the events. If you read about the Battle of Hittin and the background of it, you will see just everybody is after their interests. Most people were after their own interests, securing their own, land, their own income. It doesn't matter if I use the Crusades, if it doesn't matter against it, does it serve Islam or not? It did not matter. It was all about their own personal gains. And this is something, by the way, I mean, you see it even in the work in the masajid. You see it in the work in Islamic schools. You see it in personal interests come in, and automatically the entire project becomes jeopardized, and people get turned off from working in these environments because they don't want the quote-unquote politics of it. But this is on a grand scale or on a larger scale. This also existed amongst the Muslims, and of course that leads to nothing but defeat. Another thing that has, that thiqah, the trust, the absolute trust that Allah Ta'ala will provide victory, because Allah Ta'ala does not support the unjust. وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah Ta'ala does not like the people who are unjust. So you're talking about, when Muslims are faced with a challenge like we are today, we have to have the trust that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will help the believers. It is a matter of whether have we done our work or not. If we have the sincerity and we are working towards solving the problem or not, as long as we are so working it, we have to work with the absolute confidence that Allah Ta'ala will make the Islam and the justice victorious. The other thing something to take away is that you notice that most of the talk, at least, most of the work that Salah ad-Din did with Nur ad-Din Zengi and his father, it was all in preparation, just for those 2 days of fight, just to get to that point. Most of the time, the hardest work is the work that does not show. Most of the time, the hardest work is the work where you are planting roots and putting, and that's where people feel discouraged that you've done this, I've done this for so many days, for some months, where I've been saying the same thing for, and nothing has happened. There has to be a way to assess whether something has happened or not. But the work that is being done, if it is resting on proper foundation, then you expect, success. You expect something to happen. But that is the most difficult part, because again, it's not visible at all. Another thing is that something that is relevant to the way that Muslims are perceived. Salah ad-Din allowed the Jews to live in Jerusalem. And to worship in Jerusalem. You know, he did not, Muslims, Salah ad-Din took over Bayt al-Maqdis. He did not come and decide all the Jews are out. On the contrary, he allowed them to come and live in Bayt al-Maqdis. The same thing with the Christians. The Christians lived in Bayt al-Maqdis. And as I said, their churches, historical churches that are still established. The fact that they are living amongst Muslims for, about 1500 years, and they're still Christians, shows that the Muslims actually tolerated them. We have in Jerusalem, there is Hart al-Nasara, just like there's Hart al-Yahud. There's a Christian alley, they call it, or neighborhood. And there's the Jewish neighborhood. They were left be. That's it. You live your life, you settle your issues the way according to your religion, you marry, you divorce, you worship, you do your thing, and nobody's going to bother you. You do, and then you are interacting with the Muslims in the public life. That is according to Islam. But your private affairs and your private religion, nobody is bothering you. And this is something that, throughout history, this is pretty much how Muslims behaved with non-Muslims. And by the way, keep in mind, Allah yajzik khair, Abu Tariq reminded me of this. The Muslims did not call the Crusaders. The Christians called themselves the Crusaders. It was the Muslims who used to refer to them as al-Ifranj, or the Franks, the people who are coming from that land, but not associating them with their religion. Because the conflict was not between Christians and Muslims, even though the Crusaders were Christians. But Muslims did not fight them because they were Christians. Muslims fought them because they invaded their land. So now it's the same if talking about, it's not that because you hate Christians or you hate Jews or if you are Hindu, you are an atheist, you invade my land, I'm going to fight back. Because that's what anybody would do. So this is something that is interesting to note, because they were not being fought as Christian, and because they're Christians, they were fought because they were invaders. Okay. The other thing is that Muslims, by the way, and this is something that's also interesting, I think, that Muslims never experience war or do not have in their culture, we do not have in our culture, the idea of religious war. So because you are a Christian, I'm going to fight you. Because you are a Hindu, I'm going to fight you. Because of that, I'm going to fight you. The religious war is not in our culture. We have rules that govern the relationship with non-Muslims. So just because a person is of a certain belief, it does not mean that automatically we're going to fight them. As a matter of fact, the idea itself is a European idea, a European concept, experience, rather than an Islamic one. Just finally, I want to ask the question, are the Crusades still going on? Because some people, remember I said the Salabi mentioned and not only him, really other historians also, they mentioned that they extended from the Byzantine time and they just continued. From the early parts of Islam. So there are various indicators actually that they do, and some of them believe in Crusaders, and and they do it as such. For example, Joseph Gouraud was French general after they defeated the Arabs in 1920. He went into the Masjid al-Umawi, the major masjid in Damascus, where the grave of Salah ad-Din is located. So he went and reached the grave and kicked it with his shoes, and he said, "Wake up, Salah ad-Din, we are back." So for him, he was actually known to be a crusader, but he he expressed that as well. You have the Allenby, the British general Edmund Allenby, when he entered Jerusalem triumphantly through the Jaffa gate. And on that occasion, what did he say? He declared that the wars of the Crusades are now complete. Okay, the wars of the Crusades are now complete. So definitely it has it has residence in their minds, in their psyche, that there are crusades and they are doing now. And you can notice also, even after secularism was adopted by the West, when they occupied lands, when they occupied Muslim lands, the campaigns to, missionaries started working in the Muslim world as well, introducing their religion, introducing Christianity specifically. So now, even though those campaigns after secularism, after the Industrial Revolution, they were not necessarily religious, but definitely there was the type of religion that exists in the lands that are colonized does help or hinder what you're planning to do. Islam, the nature of Islam does not allow secularism, does not permit a society to be a secular society, because we do not separate between religion and politics. For us, it's one thing called obedience to Allah Ta'ala in all aspects of life. We call it the Islamic way of life, as an individual and as a society. So it does not allow that. And it calls for the resistance. It calls for resisting occupation, etc. But in Christianity, by the nature of Christianity not having rules to govern life and to govern the political sphere, not even the personal affairs up to a point, you find that it's more suitable for it can work with secularism. It can work with so you can be an atheist, you can be a secularist, or somebody with willing or waiting for a rule. You can work with secularism, but you cannot work as a Muslim with that. So back to just one thing that I want to mention related to today's issue, Gaza. As I mentioned, Salah ad-Din, rahimahullah, would not have been able to establish anything. He would not have been able to liberate Palestine or Gaza or Bayt al-Maqdis. He would not have been able to do it if he did not have the power to do it. He had the army. Salah ad-Din was the ruler of Egypt, and then became, after that, the ruler of Egypt, Syria, Iraq. The whole area was under his rule. So Salah ad-Din was not just a man who got up from amongst the Muslims and said, let's go, and led the Muslims, and that's not the way it happened. We just talked about various events that led to that. If Salah ad-Din did not have that state under him, that army under him, he would not have been able to succeed. And when we talk now about the Muslims, and when we talk about Gaza and Palestine at large, or any Muslim land for that matter, if we're expecting a Salah ad-Din, there has to be work to establish a Salah ad-Din. You have to have a work that allows Salah ad-Din to function. And now, I'll just ask a simple question. If any of the rulers now, any of the rulers who are around, Palestine, repents to Allah Ta'ala and says, okay, that's it. I'm not dealing with the Zionists, and I'm dealing with the Americans. I'm not a puppet of this country and that country. I'm going to serve my people. I'm going to serve Allah Ta'ala, etc. Mobilize the armies. Will that make an effect or not? He might lose, but he had the vehicle to do it. He has the ability to do it. But if I get up now and telling you, I'm the new Salah ad-Din, let's do it, what do I have? Who is going to? And that's what I'm saying. We're making Salah ad-Din and the return of Salah ad-Din, or some of us at least, as like a fantasy or something unreal. Reality is, you need one of the rulers either to repent to Allah Ta'ala and lead the Ummah in the direction of liberation, or these rulers, or at least to start with one of them, two of them, removed, replaced by a sincere person who works for Islam and the Muslims, who can move the Muslim agenda forward. Other than that, we're going to keep donating, we're going to keep making dua, and we're going to keep doing what, just feeling the heartache of nothing happened. Even our dua is not answered, because the dua goes with work, hand in hand, not one to replace the other. The work does not replace the dua, and the dua does not replace the work. So they have to go hand in hand. Unless we do that, we are going to keep going into that vicious cycle over and over and over. The one thing that is not similar to the situation at the time of Salah ad-Din is that the people who were the rulers in those provinces, and they were, self-centered and looking after their interests, they were actually independent. They were working for themselves. The Muslim world now, we do not have independent rulers. They're all tied up to, if you take the Middle East and how it was formed, at least, you will see that the rulers were actually picked from families and established in the Muslim world to make sure that Muslims never solve a problem they have. It will always, you are the richest lands, but you are the poorest people. You are the most educated, but you're still third world countries. You are powerful and you have history to prove that the Muslims, many of them, the men are warriors and fighters and willing to do go the extra mile for Islam and for Allah Ta'ala. Yet your lands are occupied and violated, and this is by design. And unless we change that reality, I'm afraid to say that there will be no Salah ad-Din, because Salah ad-Din requires that reality to be changed. Jazakumullah khair for listening. And I'm sorry for being all over the place, but it is really, I tried to narrow it down as much as possible, and still people were waving to me, you have 5 minutes, you have 10 minutes. So he's doing his job.
Right, Jazakallah khairan. We have time for a few questions, so we'll go ahead and take some. I'll start from the back and then inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. Yes.
I can hear you.
As you were mentioning, there's different elements within this context. One was the people, right? You have these entities who are being ruled. What would the people think? Because now they see a turnaround. Okay, I'm ruled by this person. Now the crusade come. Now I'm ruled by the crusade. Tomorrow, the Muslim come. They took over, and now there's a new person who keep the council. So there is this constant turnaround. So how did, if you give us a little bit of context of what were the people thinking? What were the people like, average, like, okay, I'm just living life and not this new ruler coming, new thing.
Yeah.
And then in these different pockets. The second thing is you explained from the background about the Muslim aspect of the transition, but what about the Europeans? What were they so-called their entity, or what were they going through the struggle to say, you know what, let me keep attacking the Muslims? Was it because of the power? Was it because of the money? Was it because of the trade routes? And the third thing is the money, because everything costs, to sustain a war, to build a battle and go and fight and then lose and then come back. How did they get these armies to constantly feed this? Because it does require a whole industry to be able to do that.
So, for the first, how the people felt, you will notice that when Nur ad-Din Mahmud, for example, entered into Raha, immediately Muslims cheered. Everybody cheered. But the Muslims were so defeated mentally that they're used to being defeated by the Crusaders, that they just lost that ability that I need to even to resist. So they were just living their lives, but they were waiting for somebody to change. And when somebody came, all they had to do, and that's why one of the thing about the power of Islam and the power of the Islamic Aqidah. Despite the covering, let's say, or the pollution that took place, covering the Islamic rules and the Islamic resistance and the aspect of activism, etc. You find that all it took is just a couple of wins by the Muslims finding a sincere leadership that they thought was sincere, and they all marched behind him. So they marched behind Nur ad-Din Mahmud. If you remember, we said even the people of Damascus were calling Nur ad-Din Mahmud, come and take over. When Salah ad-Din started winning, everybody was siding with him. And many people left actually even their provinces, and they started moving with Salah ad-Din. But I mean that was the background. On the side of the Crusaders, the Crusades themselves started to fulfill the multiple, let's say, needs. One is the religious. You needed to rally the people. Well, this is not the religious, but the religious is to fight the Muslims, because also, as many Christians also left Christianity too and embraced Islam, and that was something that was bothering them too as well. The expansion of Islam in the various areas to the point of reaching Constantinople, That was something that was bothering them. So they wanted to expand, to counter the Islamic spread, and to retain the control. But in addition to it, you have the political factor. The lack of stability in Europe at that time was also present, and they wanted to unify the people because it was a feudalist society. So every landowner had his peasants who were basically barely living, and feeding him and feeding his family. And they were worrying about each other, against each other. They were fighting each other as well. So they needed to stabilize the society by actually engaging them into an external cause. So they tried with the masses, and of course that failed, as we mentioned. Then those leaders in Europe started joining it, and some of them, just to show you that it was materialistic in nature, mostly. Before they even reached Beit al-Maqdis, they landed in an area where they could control. The guy would say, "You guys continue with your crusade. I am landing here, and I'm establishing my castle here," and they would stay there. So this was not. It wasn't just one thing. In addition, it was even a social status, because some of the peasants, with their way to get out of the actual slavery they were in, was to do something like this, where they can get more money from outside, more resources, so that they can get out of under the control. So there were multiple reasons taking place, for that push the Crusades to take place.
We're going to quickly take a question from online, and then we'll go through the rest. Brother Imad is asking, can you elaborate on the types of efforts that laid the ground for the victory of Salah ad-Din in the da'wah of the ulama? So you talked about, I think, Ibn Aqil a bit in the beginning, but what about scholars like Muwaffiq ad-Din ibn Qudama or Majd ad-Din ibn Taymiyyah or any other scholar?
What I don't know the details. I mean, I did not really read details with names to say who was with him, but I know that Salah ad-Din took, maybe Abu Tariq can add to it, but Salah ad-Din took special care to keep the ulama and the judges around him. So so he was always in constant consultation with them. Some of them were used to go to the jihad with them, with the army. So that was there, but beyond that, really nothing on my mind now. Abu Tariq, you have something?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I would like to mention first some comments in addition to the
Tfaddal.
point which you mentioned. I was trying to talk about it. One factor helped in this work, the preparation for Salah ad-Din, is the work before Salah ad-Din. And the best book for those who read Arabic is Dr. Majid Kilani. هكذا ظهر صلاح الدين وهكذا عادت القدس. This is the way Salah ad-Din emerged, and this is the way Jerusalem was returned.
Yes.
And he brings that back to the roots which you talked about once, نظام الملك and Al-Arslan, they have the Nizamiyya school system, when Al-Ghazali played a great role in the education and in bringing the awareness to a level where they started this networking and this effort.
Yeah.
But the details by themselves need a lecture.
Yeah.
But I would like to actually mention some points. One point is very minor. You mentioned that Muslims had the keys for the church in Jerusalem, which is right. No one disputes that. But I don't want people to think that Muslims got the keys because they want to control the church, or they want to control who will go in and who will go out.
It was actually based on their request.
It is their request.
Yeah.
Exactly. And why did they request this? Because of their competition.
Yeah.
They wouldn't settle for a sect to have the keys.
Yeah.
So they settled for Muslims.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
No.
The other point, actually, you talked about Sulh al-Ramla or al-Ramla.
Yes.
Which is true, but actually Salah ad-Din signed certain agreements or certain treaties with different crusade leaders in the area, but all of them were designed in such a way that it would help him in his effort. So in Al-Ramla, as an example,
Yes.
he agreed to keep Ramla under the Crusaders, providing that they will not accept and they will reject down any offer from the Ismailis.
Correct.
Because there are Ismailis living in that area, as you know, Alawis and Ismailis.
Yes.
So it was not, okay, so it was not just, okay, he was defeated and he gave them Ramla and let's move on.
Yeah.
He designed all of the treaties for this purpose. The one point I would like to mention, and you talked about it somehow, that Alhamdulillah, always, that the occupied people will be influenced by the occupiers. It didn't happen in the case of the Mongols and in the case of the Crusaders. Muslims at that time were defeated militarily, but they were not defeated intellectually. So Muslims were able to influence the Mongols, and they became Muslims, and they went back to where they came from to carry Islam. And in the case of the Crusaders, some of them chose to stay in Palestine. And up to now, you know, some Christian families there, they go back to their roots of the Crusaders because they realized the Islamic way of life, and some of them became Muslims. So the invaders were influenced by Muslims. Alhamdulillah.
That is true.
In these two cases. Barakallah fikum.
Allah yajzak al-khair, Abu Talib. Allah barak fikum.
We'll squeeze in a few more questions.
Why squeeze it? Who's in a hurry? I'm not in a hurry. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
The events that's happening in Gaza, would you relate that to Nuruddin Mahmoud's time or not? And the second question is, if the idea is to flip one of the states around the Muslim states of the rulers, the minute they flip to help Muslims around, they would be counter-flipped or assassinated.
Yeah, but you know, looking at it this way leads to the conclusion that change cannot happen. Actually, no, change can happen, and whoever is going to do the flipping, you know, has to take these things into consideration. Meaning, you have to be politically aware, first of all, that whichever state you are approaching, one or more, they have to be viable. They have to be able to live, to function in case of an embargo, in case of a boycott, in case of an attack. You know, the certain steps have to be made, you know, with the Muslim Ummah. As soon as you make that flip, you make that change with the Muslim Ummah, so that you get the Ummah support, not so that they don't see it as a either another coup or another you know, long series of coups. So it has to be well planned. You know, it's not random. But I personally, and maybe I'm limited in creativity here, but I cannot see another solution. You know, the Middle East, as an example, was created in such a way so that it cannot solve any problem, to disable the Muslims from solving their problems. You know, and it appointed in every region that the Sykes-Picot Agreement did put a ruler who keeps the interest of the colonialists, you know, rather than the interest of the people. And this is clear. Now look at even the latest events in Gaza. Who even and I am not a promoter of the United Nations or its institutions or the court system. None of that. But even that, even the United Nations Court of Justice, who is the one who even submitted the case? Who submitted the case? South Africa. What does South Africa have to do with Islam and Muslims? I mean, even on that level, none of the Muslim states, quote unquote Muslim states, actually even did that much. None actually, based on the private discussions and you find it in the newspapers, that privately actually they were supporting Israel to eliminate Hamas. Even though the war is not about Hamas, but my point is they actually side with the aggressor, with the colonialist, with the one who's who killed 30,000 people, most of them women and children. They would side with them in private and the people who even marching in the street. If you march in the street just to say, to show support, sometimes they will even arrest you just for that. You're not allowed to do that. And if they allow it to make sure that you don't do it again, they will put some of their secret police in the process. They'll break a couple of cars, they'll set a tire or two on fire. And then what they do, they'll just not arrest their agents, but they'll arrest all the leadership of those people so that it doesn't pick up momentum. And then after a few sessions in the secret police stations, you go and you never come back to do any demonstration with them. What I'm saying is the entire environment on every level, on the political level, on the military level, the Muslim world does not make, generally speaking, does not make its own weapons. If it buys weapons, it buys almost obsolete weapons or weapons that are known to have high performance, but yet these features are stripped from it, etc. And then at the end of the day, when they use it, who do they use it against? Each other. Which war actually was to defend Muslims, or which war to defend Muslim lands? Or militarily, politically, educationally, economically, we are colonized up to our eyeballs on every level. So it's not just a matter of really flipping the political system here and there. The extensive work has to be done in the Ummah, in the planning for that era where it will happen. And this is something that has to be emphasized in my humble view. The confidence, that absolute trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it will happen. Maybe it will not happen in our time, like it did not happen in the time of Imad ad-Din Zengi. Maybe not even in the time of Nur ad-Din, because Nur ad-Din, it did not happen in his time. Maybe it's not in my kids, it doesn't matter. But what matters is that I played my part. I laid down an idea. I promoted an idea. I promoted a vision. I promoted a solution and made sure that it stays alive. And with the next person takes it, the next person takes it, until finally it will reach its destination when Allah Ta'ala wills it. But, we should never feel that because of the difficulties that you will face, that, just sit home and watch Netflix. You can't. You can't.
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
One thing that you mentioned at the end of your presentation is how we currently have to be doing the work in order to set the grounds for a Salah ad-Din.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know. We are ordered to live by Islam, practice Islam, put it in our lives as individuals, as families, and as a society. There is no such place in the world where this exists. That is the root problem. That is a central problem. And of course, with that, the political system, when it's implemented, when it's in place, it's implemented by somebody who is supposed to, part of their job is to protect the Muslims and Islam and the values of Islam and the lands of Islam and the property of Islam and the property of Muslims. That's part of Islam. That's part of what they're supposed to do. Then automatically, once that's in place, Palestine will be liberated, insha'Allah ta'ala. And the Muslims who are living in misery, not just in Palestine, because now it's just a hot flash, that we are having in Palestine. We have, how about the suffering of Muslims in India? How about the suffering of Muslims in Kashmir? How about the suffering of Muslims in China? How about, Syria? I mean, the list can go on and on and on, because in reality, as I said, the Muslim world is designed so that it can never solve a problem. What happens is that the problem, one aspect of it becomes magnified, becomes a hot topic of now, like now in Gaza. Then, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, another atrocity is done to the Muslims somewhere else. We shift gears from Gaza because now this is more urgent. And now we're used to Gaza. We're used to what happens to Gaza, aren't we? Do we have the same really intensity in looking at the news and looking at what's happening now as we did, let's say, 6 months ago? It's a human nature. It's a human nature. You become accustomed to it, and it takes, until some other disaster comes in, and then, automatically everybody starts talking about that. But the first one did not get solved. You still have the same problem. And the same thing with other places. The problem does not go away. And the Muslims still in China, the problem has not gone away. In Myanmar, it hasn't gone away. Wherever you think, it hasn't gone away. It's still there. No?
Coming problem in.
That's exactly. And that's what I'm saying. So you see this just bubble here, bubble there. Painful. Sorry to call it a bubble, but it is painful to see it. But reality, from a cold view of what we need to do, we're not going to be able to solve it unless we solve the problem. So now, how does that take place, etc.? That requires the different, but I just wanted to differentiate so that, because Muslims now jump on the bandwagon, okay, we have to support Gaza. Of course we have to support Gaza. But we need to go beyond that. We need to have that ummatic point of view and start saying, not just, help Gaza, but to liberate the Muslim lands in general. How do we do that? How do we prevent it from coming back? These are discussions that I think are more worthy of having.
Assalamu alaikum. So actually I have two questions. One is
take it easy, Allah.
Sorry. So I wanted to find out, we talked about the Abbasi Khalifa.
Yes.
We talked about the Shias within it, the Wazirs and so forth. We also have the Fatimis.
Yes.
Any idea what the percentage today? You would say maybe there's 15% of the Shias versus the Sunnis. So any idea of what the percentage of the Shias were there at that time? That is one question. The other thing is, you also said that, we're looking at even how the Muslims work with each other and deal with each other. I mean, within the masjids and within the communities and so forth, one, there's no trust. We also have, you see that in that era, or still at this time, the economic, the wealth and things like that is what they're after. Their thoughts are not about Islam and so forth. How do we get rid of the sickness that, how we can work with each other? Because Islam is not coming unless the Muslims are doing something. It's not, individually you can, and maybe as small groups, but without the sickness going away, that it is for Islam that we are working.
Yeah.
How is it that we're doing this?
So regarding the percentage, I don't know. Maybe Abu Tariq, do you have any?
No.
I don't know.
No, that
Yeah, but you keep in mind, by the way, the Shiism, Sunnism, and even within the Sunnah, the Madahib, they were subject to political factors, as we saw now. So you have the Shia established in Egypt and even in Baghdad trying to overthrow it. But once, Nur ad-Din Mahmud and Salah ad-Din came, wiped out the Shia from Egypt, and now really there is no Shiism there. So it's always subject to political factors. So it's difficult to pinpoint. I mean, what the percentage and was it consistent, etc. But I would say that it varies. I don't know the number. But regarding this, regarding the issues of the masajid and the schools, etc., or let's say in general disputes, this is normal. As I say, it's bad. It's bad. Because, for example, when you say, I want to open an Islamic school, and the leader, the head of the board comes and says, all my kids are grown up. I'm not talking about your kids, I'm talking about the community's kids. When you have that kind of mindset, okay, You'll always have it. And I'm saying it is normal to run into it, not that it is good or it's healthy. And it is not an indication, and you cannot draw it as an indication to the Muslim Ummah at large. Just like saying, how many of you pray al-Fajr on time? You see? Only 50%, only 60%. So how do you expect victory? How do you expect to change things? No, this is a problem. It needs to be addressed. And that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And they are, just because 50% of us do not pray Fajr on time, it does not mean that this applies to the Muslim Ummah at large, or to even a bigger section of it. We don't know. But we are saying there are problems, with it, keep in mind that the West, living in the West, has created a set of problems for Muslims. The masajid, running the masajid and Islamic schools, maybe mainly masajid. We don't have that kind of organization in Islam. In Islam, the masajid are under the guidance and under the supervision of the head of state. You don't need a committee, etc. They have their imam, they have their khatibs, they have their muaddin, they have people who come and clean it, etc. You don't have to worry about it, So I'm saying we have unique situations where sometimes the best and sometimes the worst in us comes out. Allahu Muyassar.
Yeah, you had mentioned about how are the Crusades still going on, and I wanted you to comment or address the issue of the role of religion in all of this, because it's very interesting. Because on the one hand, we know Israel was started on the issue of Zionism, which, yeah, they were atheists and had nothing to do with religion. But on the other hand, there are Jews arguing that no, they're promised this land and they're going to in fact get into a bigger area. The Christians, on the other hand, also are into this, thinking this is the coming of the Messiah. We need to move this along. They're moving their red cows to Israel to try to get ready for the sacrifice. The Muslims, I think there's a bit of a issue, because on the one hand, I think a lot of the Muslims, alhamdulillah, realize this is the home of Aqsa. This is the place that we have to help because they're Muslim. But is it that the Muslim leaders just don't see the connection with Islam with this? Are they just seeing this as economic issue, political issue, and their own need for survival, and not really caring about Islam in this regarding Palestine, or what's the issue?
I mean, with just about the religion and Zionism, most of the founders of Zionism were atheists. And most of the Zionists are actually secular. They're not religious in nature, most of them. You have some of them who've mixed Judaism with nationalism. And those are you find them amongst the settlers, and those who mixed, they made even nationalism into the religion, part of the religion itself. But, was it Papi who said, most Zionists are atheists until they want to prove that God lived in this land, then they'll tell you God gave us this land. And I saw a guy actually on YouTube, he called in, and the guy is an atheist, and he said, God promised us this land. The guy's telling him, the Muslim is telling him, do you actually listen to what you're saying? You're an atheist, there is no God, and the guy said, God gave us the land, It suits them when it benefits them. In reality, even Jerusalem, the so-called Israel, it is not a religious state. It's not a Jewish state. As I said, most of them are the religious people. Even amongst the religious, you have divisions, you have different sects, you have different groups. Some of them do not believe in the validity or the legitimacy of the Israeli state. Some of them, believe in it, but they do not believe in serving in it. Some of them, see it as this is the step before, their Messiah comes. So you have all kinds of positions within it. But, for our leaders are chosen for us. They are chosen for us. We do not choose them. Take any election and see how the election is run. When it is a clean election by, observing parties come and they say it was a clean election, anybody who has Islam leaning will win. When the latest, of course, was with Hamas, in 2006, I believe, 2005, when they ran for the elections and they won. My point is that we are not allowed to choose our leaders. Even during the Gulf War, when they were talking about what are we going to replace Saddam Hussein with? Democracy. Said these people are not used to democracy. What we need is a benevolent dictator. So we're not even good enough for democracy. That's their view. That's their idea of how they view the Muslims. So they choose the leaders for us. And if we choose a leader like the Muslims in Egypt, they chose Mohammed Morsi, rahimahullah. Okay, they chose him. It doesn't matter what mistakes he made, what he did not make, but they chose him. 53% voted for him. He got in and everybody was saying it's clean elections. He was not even allowed to rule for a year. It was just, literally delegitimizing him, discrediting him in every turn before the West, with their love for democracy, sided with the dictator coming in a coup, removing the elected one, replacing him with a dictator. And then they talk about human rights. And then you look at the prisons in Egypt. How many tens of thousands of people, who are in prison for years on since Sisi came to power, and they don't even know why they're there. They don't know why they were arrested. They don't know why they're in prison. I'm saying somebody is planning for us. We are not planning for ourselves. And the rulers, when they pick somebody like this guy or somebody like the other guy, these are picked with knowledge of who is actually, who they are picking. For me, it is a crusade. Now we're talking about, is it religious or the religious component? Again, the change, I would say, and maybe I could be wrong, that it's not introducing a religion for the population, but removing the religion they have. You can do similar damage by simply making Muslims doubt their own deen, putting a question mark on our rules, on our akhlaq, on our that we are khayr ummah. Just putting the question mark, and we are just like everybody else. Oh, and as a matter of fact, we have many problems. That is just like Muslims, were celebrating, any little victory the Muslims had against the Crusaders, and because that's a morale boost for them. We Muslims, you keep hitting us on the head over and over and over. Eventually, we will lose the confidence, and we will lose it because we're humans. Look how the Muslim world is treated, and you see where we are. So, when I said one of the rulers repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, theoretically that can happen. But reality, somebody who sees day in and day out, children, women, men, old, young, being slaughtered in the way they're slaughtered in Gaza, and still siding with the one who is slaughtering them, has no soul. Has no soul. I don't know what kind of a human being that is. You see a cat run over, by a car, and you get impacted. Wallahi, you see, it's even a cat. You see a child falling, you get impacted. You see all and they know what is going on. They know what's going on. For them to take the position that they've taken of, what, we're going to make sure that no aid reaches them. We're going to make sure they remain occupied. We're going to make sure that, anybody who speaks up is going to be arrested. What hope is there? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one, al-Hadi. He is the guide.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Hannini, for
Yeah.
the really great presentation. I just want to add a couple comments. I think one of the big questions everybody has, well, what can we do? What can we do? And what keeps coming to my mind is remembering the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Alayhi salatu wassalam.
about how, towards the end of time, how, we'll be overcome and the others will be attacking us and feasting on us. And the Sahaba asked why, will we be few in number? And he says, no, you'll be many, but you'll be like the foam on the sea. And he points to the cause as being the love of this world and the hatred for death. And I think this is a theme that I see, during the times of the Crusade and something that's happening now, is what is our Muslim Ummah involved in, like I'm looking at things like Sukuk Fest and things like, our weddings, and we're just so comfortable in this world. And I feel like I've seen this even within our own community here, as the years go by, and alhamdulillah, like I am seeing more and more attachment for the things of this world. I'm seeing, everybody across the board, we're buying things on Amazon left and right, where, what's newest clothes, what's this, what's that. I feel like these are things that we can work on. These are things that are within our control. And I feel like a good way to bring this about is to make things more uncomfortable for ourselves. Let's go to winter camp, or let's go to the outdoors, let's go get dirty, let's go do something where we get ourselves out of our air-conditioned rooms and things like that. I feel like that's one step in the right direction. The other thing I wanted to just comment on is there's this really, really amazing series by Ustad Hassan Al-Wan about this same, the story of Salahuddin and the generation that came around, and he had the opportunity to do about 6 weeks on this. So alhamdulillah, it's really thorough. So it's a really good follow-up from this lecture, inshallah. And two of the things that he highlighted were the far-sightedness of Salahuddin and the leadership, not being reactionary and thinking ahead. And that's a skill that we can learn and practice on. And the other one is, again, as we mentioned, the establishment of schools and education and the spiritual work that laid the groundwork in the foundation. For example, when the first Crusades came, the Muslims were in such a state that they were drinking and celebrating, with the women dancing and stuff like that in the Muslim armies. And there are taverns and pubs and stuff open in all the Muslim lands. So those things had to change. The hearts of the Muslims had to change in order to bring about the Salahuddin generation.
Yes. Allah yajzak al-khair. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So since October 7th, there's two strands of discussion that I'm contending with here. One is there's the one group that they know what the ultimate solution is. And as you said, you have to cultivate that environment to bring about that solution. So there's that one group. There's the other group, and I'm highlighting the extremes here, and I'll come to the middle. The other extreme is I'm on some of these WhatsApp groups and people are just, okay, let's go to City Hall, let's protest, let's do this, like a whole list of actions that, I don't want to go through. And I'm thinking, the former group looks at the other group in not so many words, but in that attitude that you guys are just doing what comes to your mind and feeding your emotions and letting off steam, et cetera, et cetera. There's that. The other group comes back and says, man, you guys are living in a bubble. You guys are detached. You guys are some like research think tank. I mean, there's fires. The flames are 10 feet high. And you guys are talking about, for example, I've been in some of these discussions. You guys are talking about khilafah. So what I have to level set here, because both groups I think are, if you take these two extremes, both of them are incorrect. And I'm making a comment, I don't have a question. The comment here is that, yeah, I'm of course, as a Muslim, I'm a firm believer in the Khilafah, and it does not come overnight. And, this, you have to engage in the hard work, roll up the sleeves and get in the educational mode of, okay, bringing about a public opinion for the Khilafah, for a solution, etc. I get that. But that should not be to the exclusion of engaging in, I'm not saying all of the actions that the other group is engaging in, but there are some things that I think that you can do. I'm not going to list them here. I have brought this up with some people who want the ultimate solution to come out, and you will get back a statement such as, brother, what's that going to do? Why don't you just go ahead and live your life? And I'm purposely not listing these actions because that's where the problem starts. But I get the, brother, that's not going to help. We need the ultimate solution. Yeah, we need the ultimate solution. I get that. But in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least I can say, look, I did what's in my power to do what I thought was best according to Islam.
Can I comment on your comment?
Huh?
Can I comment on your comment?
Yeah.
Okay, Allah is khair. No, I don't يا أخي الله يجزيك خير يا أبو رشيد. يعني I don't see a conflict between the two. What there is no conflict. You're talking. No, but bear with me.
There is a conflict.
Bear with me.
I'm talking about the reality.
Yeah, but so if whoever, and let's hope that we can shed some light. Maybe it will resolve part of the conflict at least. يعني first of all, what the Muslims who have been demonstrating and going out and sharing on for social media, etc., they have done is highlighting the existence of a problem, that really without them, the world would not have seen what is taking place the way it is taking place. I mean, the setback that the Zionists have received because of those social media and because of demonstrations, etc., in PR, the image, I don't know if it can ever be repaired because of what these people who have never heard of Palestine, they've heard of, or Muslims, or that in that way, they heard only of one side and supporting them. Maybe California is a bit different, but where I am, I have rednecks and I have people who are, ultra religious Christians, people, church goers, not just every week. They are even during the week. They are in full support of this until the discussions take place, until the things are shared, until they see demonstrations, what takes place, the media, and so anybody who says this is not beneficial, it's nonsense. I mean, what beneficial as in you did not liberate it? No, nobody's liberated it yet. But who said we just talked about preparation? Now at least people are, when you talk about over 50% of the youth, see that the Israeli state of Israel is illegitimate. Over 50% of the youth seeing it as illegitimate. This is not in the United States. This is not a small thing. So I'm saying that happens, but for people to think at the flip side of it, to think I did my duty and this is it, you have not done your duty. Maybe because we can do more, and as I said, we need to focus on the real problem, or the fundamental problem, not the real problem, the fundamental problem, the basic problem we have. Because again, today it was Gaza, tomorrow it's somewhere else. The next day is the other place. It's just this is the way it's been happening. So we need to think, any doctor who tries to treat a patient like that, he should not be practicing medicine. Okay, you have a fever, okay, here's a Tylenol, and you have stomach problems, here is this medicine, and you have this is not the way you treat. You look for what's causing the problem, and that's the difference. Yes, sister. Right now, honestly, I wish. Yes. How can we go to the root of the problem? As I said, the root of the problem is the absence of Islam as a political entity so that it can address the Muslim Ummah's issues. That is the problem. Now, how do we restore it, etc.? Which hopefully maybe Al-Arqam can, not that really I have a full answer or anything like that, but maybe Al-Arqam can hold another session where we can discuss this. But definitely, if we talked about, and some people now, because of the idea of Al-Khilafah, because it hasn't happened yet, and therefore, do we need it? Actually, it's not even on my top list. And some people are saying it's not even on my top list. Why? Because there is no guarantee that Al-Khilafah will save the people. Yes, they're right in saying this, because just because there's a Khilafah does not mean that your problems are solved. But that's the vehicle. Why take a Khilafah that is weak, incapable of solving any problems, and say, you see, your Khilafah doesn't work. Why don't I take the Khilafah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and make everything work? Why not? Especially this is what the Rasul ﷺ promised us, that is a Khilafah on the path of prophethood. Why take a strong Khilafah and say, look, what did they have accomplished? How they saved Muslims, how they saved Islam, and how they protected the Muslim lands. Then you can say, if it's weak, we need to strengthen it. If it is, not functioning properly, we need to make it function properly. But this is the vehicle. Without it, we are individuals. Yes, we are part of the Muslim Ummah, but we are only individuals. We have no power to change anything. So it is really a needed discussion. But to say that I really have details for everything, no, but definitely there has to be organized work to move the Muslims from the point we are in to that point. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the Ummah the best.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Hannini. Jazakumullah khair, it was a good event. I wanted to add just four points, very small bullet points. If we are to succeed, in at least in my opinion, and talking to a lot of people, if we can emphasize in the minds of Muslims that to look to Islam as a complete way of life, rather than just concentrating on the ibadat or the religiosity of things. If we can emphasize to them that Islam has a complete domination on us for the sake of looking to the entire world from the lenses of Islam, and look to Islam as a complete way of life, that can really help in people looking for answers. If we can help, which now, mashallah, most people realize, but this idea has to be maintained, that all Muslim rulers are agents of the Kafirs in the Muslim lands. That helps them break a trust, and perhaps when you see somebody as an agent, you will probably hope to change them over, not have any feeling that this person or that person will do something good for us. Two examples I would say, these Muslim agents of the kuffar in the Muslim land usually hold us down by police or by the military. And I think in khatibs, and we should emphasize to khatibs, to talk about this principle that says, La atat al-makhluq fi ma'siyat al-khaliq. If people understood, if people in the Pakistan army or Pakistan police see somebody working for Islam and yet they're fighting him, if they understand this principle from the very beginning, then maybe the people cannot move the police or the army against its own people, per se. And from our history, the last point is that, mashallah, even when there is a problem between Amir Muawiyah and Ali, and when the Romans tried to interfere and try to aid Muawiyah, he responded in a very noble way by calling the Roman emperor, you Roman dog. When I and my brother Ali solve our problem, we'll come to see you. So this idea in a khutbah, asking the khatib to talk about it this way, should be very beneficial. Because if you inject somebody in their mind this idea that even when Muslims fight each other, at least will not go and ask for help from the Kafir, because that is a principle that just does not sit well with Islam at all.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah.
Allah is khair.
Assalamu alaikum. So you mentioned that we have to lay the groundwork for the next Salah Hittin, and inshallah with sessions like this, everyone's education level is going up, everyone's getting a better idea of what the long-term goals of the Ummah and stuff are. Is there anything unique about us, like building this development or becoming better and having better goals and having, long-term plans versus short-term plans here in America? Because one of the things you mentioned is, theoretically, of course, one of the leaders repenting could be the start of him influencing his people and moving the Muslim agenda. That's where all the Muslims are. What about us here? What does our development do for them? Is there a bridge that needs to be built between us so far away from the Muslim Ummah? And what does our development here do for them? What's our unique role that we can play?
Allah is khair. Well, the first thing is that to keep that connection, that it's one Ummah. Because the tendency now, whether intentional or not intentional, is to create that American Muslim identity in separation of the Muslim Ummah. We need to worry about ourselves, we need to worry about our affairs in isolation of the Muslim Ummah, and this is very dangerous. So the first thing I would say, one, emphasize the universal brotherhood of the Muslims, and that it is one Ummah. Ummah cannot be divided based on geography or based on political boundaries or whatever. So the other thing is that I really think that if we Muslims, and now in the world which has become a small village, if we play our role, which is educational in nature, mostly educational, if we focus on the education of the Muslim masses, the Muslim Ummah, through various means, I think we will do a great service to Islam and the Muslims. It is not, at the end of the day, Nuruddin, not Nuruddin, Imad al-Din, his father, started with an idea, right? The idea that we need to remove the Crusades from the Muslim lands, and that cannot happen without, unity of the Muslims. We need to establish ideas, fundamental ideas amongst the Muslims, because at the end of the day, it's not a matter of just getting people to do something. You want them to do something based on conviction, based on understanding, and then it's a long-term process. Because, you look at history and you will find, what the father or was good in protecting Islam, etc. Muslims come, his children come and sell it. So what happened? What went missing? Between, why is it that Salah ad-Din was willing to spill his blood and thousands of Muslims get killed to liberate Bayt al-Maqdis, and yet you have, from the same lineage of Salah ad-Din comes out somebody who is willing to give it, for free. That's wrong. And the disconnect here is that one had conviction in something and the other one did not. And that's what I'm saying. Establishing the convictions in the Muslim Ummah regarding its unity, regarding the sovereignty of Islam, the Islamic rules, regarding the brotherhood, regarding, even history, explaining the history of Muslims. Wallahi, you read the Islamic history and it makes you proud. And then you look at the way that you're portrayed and you say, where is the disconnect? And most Muslims guarantee you that most Muslims, when they study the Islamic history, they study it as something that is negative. The Khilafah, you're talking about the Khilafah. The Khilafah is studied as something very negative, very problematic. You have two Khalifas got killed in it, three actually. Uthman, Ali, and Umar got killed in it. You're talking about fighting that's how they start, between Muawiyah and Ali. So it is negative, bad, etc. This is something that you study in history. So there is an agenda to discredit, because you cut the roots of Muslim Ummah. What do you have to be proud of? Really, where are you going to start? From 9/11? They removed the whole concept of Ummah, the whole concept of Muslims actually contributed to civilization on every front, and they were outstanding on every front, in moral standards, in economics, in sciences, in the way you treat others. They keep talking about how you treat others, the way we treated others, like we demonstrated today. So these are the things that the pride based on knowledge, not empty pride based on knowledge, based on thought, based on understanding that we need to pump in the Muslims, and that's a lifelong struggle. And I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Kareem, that he subhanahu wa ta'ala honors the Muslims with the change in their situation, where Islam becomes dominant way before we say it's a lifelong process. But we're responsible at the end of the day for what we do, not for the results of what we do.
So quick follow-up, if you don't mind. Is that happening overseas as well, that advocacy, or you said we need to have the whole Muslim Ummah have that education, right? Is our work here, can we carry that impact over there, and is it happening over there as well on itself? You have Islamic parties or groups that have been promoting this for over a century. So it's not that the arena is fresh, and actually I would say with the good and the bad of all of them, and nobody is perfect. Still, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin, they moved the Ummah from the generation after generation closer to Islam and the demand of Islam and the unity. It did not happen haphazard. Many people paid with their lives for it, but do they really represent the right thought, or completely are they right, etc.? That's a whole different discussion. But I am saying, we're not functioning in a vacuum. There is an Ummah. There is work being done, some good, some bad, some wrong, some, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give tawfiq for the right people to move the Ummah forward.
Yes.
Assalamu
Walaikum
alaikum.
salam.
In Amin Ma'alouf's book, The Crusades Through Out of Eyes, he talks about, or
I'm sorry, say it again.
Amin Ma'alouf, his
Yes.
book, The Crusades Through Out of Eyes, talks about how Imad gave Frederick like Jerusalem basically as kind of like a buffer between him and the Crusaders to try to consolidate Egypt. In a situation where we would have like political power or like where we can determine our futures, is there kind of a place for like that kind of real politicking, or is that kind of an ad hoc justification for why he gave Jerusalem to, you know, the non-Muslims? And then also, if you've read the book or if you know, I mean,
I haven't read the book, but what I would say is that there is a lot of room to maneuver when it comes to treaties and the way you sign treaties. So there is, you know, like for example, I'll give you just to show you how far Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was willing to go. In the Battle of Al-Khandaq, the ditch, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was willing to give 1/3 of the fruits of Al-Medina to the mushrikeen so that they would leave Medina. You know, so that is, again, there is room to maneuver politically, but all treaties cannot be indefinite. Meaning you cannot have a treaty that gives superiority to or control to non-Muslims over Muslims indefinitely. It has to be timed. And now the fuqaha differed on the time in it, you know, but it can be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, but it cannot be something that would give the superiority of your enemy over you indefinitely. You know, but if you're protecting the Muslims, you have no choice but to protect them. Yeah, you sign a treaty, you sign an agreement to save the lives of the Muslims, you know, until you're able to defend them again. Things like that. So there's a lot of maneuvering in that, a lot of, you know, area for, you know, political shrewdness. And I'll give an example. In the treaty that actually Salah ad-Din was signing with the king of the Crusades, I believe it was Richard, if I'm not mistaken.
Different.
Yeah, but one of them is where the guy, the king, realized that there was work to undermine him back home in Europe, so he needed to leave. Salah ad-Din dragged on the back and forth and the discussion over the treaty for about a year. An entire year. The guy is dying to go back because he wants to save his throne. And Salah ad-Din is dragging his feet in the negotiations. He's sending somebody, you know, to negotiate on his behalf. And he told him, the more they push, you push even harder. You know, which means what? You're not meeting middle way. You just keep dragging it. And he dragged it for a year to get favors, you know, things in his favor. And so that maneuverability, that you know, skill, Islam allows it, but again, it cannot be indefinite.
We'll take 2 more questions and then call it insha'Allah.
على راسي.
Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله حياكم.
Quick question on the unjust war in Gaza has pretty much exposed the weakness, how weak the Muslim governments are, the states are, you know, full of nationalism and everything. But if given how his ideology works and given that it is the only Muslim country with nuclear power, would Imran Khan in power would have made a difference how this situation was looked at or at least dealt with?
Allah barak fik. So just before the exposure mostly, and by the way, the battle or the war, the onslaught on Gaza, you can call it al-Fadiha, the revealer, the really, because it exposed, you know, everybody for what they know. But now this is for the masses, because if people are still cannot see that the rulers are on the side of the invaders and the side of the colonialists, they really have a problem with their eyesight. Because this is so clear because it's not the first campaign. First of all, it's not just Gaza. Palestine has been occupied since 48. You know, so it's not the first round in Gaza or the second round or third round. And in each one, you know, thousands and thousands of people have been killed. Because really, in reality, the war in Gaza is not about Hamas or about the Gazans. It's about making it unlivable. You cannot live in that land, so that to push the people out of it, so that it goes back under the Zionist state. Now, so Palestine has been occupied for a long time. Kashmir has also been occupied, which is much closer to Imran Khan than Palestine, right? Yet, no action was done here nor there. And I'm not saying use, nuclear weapons off the bat, but I'm saying there is nothing, no concrete moves that were done by any leader, for any of the Islamic causes, whether in India. And how much abuse do you want to see in India before you say there is a problem? What's missing? Masajid being destroyed and temples replacing them. Muslims are forced to leave their religion. Muslim women got raped. What more are we waiting for to say? Yep, now we gotta move. What is it? Okay, so I'm saying Afghanistan for a long time. Yes, before Imran Khan. But Afghanistan, the war against Afghanistan, where we don't even know how many people got killed in Afghanistan. We don't know. There are no numbers to show you how many people got killed in Afghanistan because the United States prevented that. So I'm saying where and all their soldiers were going through Pakistan, to Afghanistan. And the bases and the existence and the influence still exists. I don't see any resistance. I don't know Imran Khan's, aside from the popular agenda that he has, and but I'm saying I didn't see any activity towards that. So would he be better now than somebody else? Allahu A'lam. I don't know. I really don't know.
The kind of media coverage that I've been seeing now, as opposed to in the past, the kind of media coverage that I'm seeing now, as opposed to the past, especially coming from non-Muslims, like thinkers, like Norman Finkelstein, Ilan Pape, all these people, Gibamati, and all of them, exposing this occupation as illegal, and it's all coming out together. And they're almost implying that Israel is finished, in the way in their narratives. And I saw an old video of Piers Morgan with Netanyahu in his personal room, where he showed all the Muslim countries that are surrounding Israel, and he put his thumb on Israel. This is us. Piers Morgan said, "Why didn't you go to Belgium? Why are you here?" And he just smiled. He said, "They have this grand vision that they want the Khilafah, they want Islam," and he laughed it off, he brushed it off, because he feels that he knows, because like you said, all the leaders are all bought out. But the fact that this narrative is becoming stronger, and the fact that Piers Morgan keeps harping on terrorism, and do you recognize this, and he keeps being stuck on October 7th. Do you think it's because of fear? Because now the narrative is weakening, people don't care about these terms anymore, anywhere. They don't care if you're labeled as a terrorist, they don't care, because that narrative is weakening now, So do you think that what they're trying to say, is that going to really happen? The way they said that Israel is finished. You'll see Scott Riddle, he's exposing them left, right, and center from all their military tactics, that Israel is finished, Israel is finished. So is that true? If, considering all this narrative that's going on, and if that happens, say if Palestine is liberated, then what happens?
Yeah, Allah is khair. Well, first of all, just I think it's an exaggeration to say that it's finished. I don't think it's finished, because it's not in its own strength. Now we just mentioning it, we downloaded a couple of apps about boycott, right? Any company that supports what they call illegal settlement versus legal settlement Israel proper versus occupied territories. That's how they classify them. But I downloaded a couple of apps, and if you go through the app list, you see there's every company under the sun is given millions and millions and millions. We're not talking about the United States as a government. We're not talking about Britain as a government, Germany as a government. I'm just saying the kinds of money that they're collecting from corporations. On top of it, the money that they get from their supporters, the multi-billionaires that exist in the United States and Britain and other European countries. Add that to the political, military, as well as moral support that they receive, from the Western countries, especially the United States. So it is not a state that's running on its own energy. It's a sponsored state. It's a client state. It is being supported by external factors. In my humble view, is that if you expect it to go away, the main factors have to the main sponsors have to either wash their hands and say, we have nothing to do with it, or they themselves become no more. But in reality, it is not independent to say that, it's self-sufficient. And just take the negotiation, the latest thing about weapons. When the United States, they're waiting for ammunition, ammunition from the United States, send us more so that we can fight. Send us more. And who are you fighting? I mean, because the image here is that they are the 6th strongest army in the world. Okay, I'll take it. Fighting a bunch of ragtag people in there who fight there in Adidas training suits and slippers, and those are the people they're fighting out of tunnels and basic weapons. Yet they're saying we're running out of weapons and we cannot defend ourselves. Which means what? It means that if this is true, it means that they were not given weapons to excel. They're given weapons just to survive with them, and you remain dependent on us to supply you with more. I do not see them as finished. I see them as their reality is becoming more exposed to the world, and the failure is not really just the failure of the Muslim leaders or the Zionist state. The failure is even the value system. The European Western with capital W, the Western value system that is failed in its entirety. Because when you bombard and you're willing to attack countries because of human rights, you're willing to attack countries because of human rights and freedom, then you come and you see 30,000 people, most of them, according to your numbers, they're saying 30,000, most of them are women and children, are killed, and then you stand by supporting, not standing by, I cannot help, but feeding and supporting the one who's committing it. That shows it's a moral failure altogether. It's an ideological failure. So I mean, Abu Tariq, if you have a different opinion or you want to add, please. Allah Zakfar.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and conclude. Jazakumullahu khairan everyone for coming in person and attending. There was a QR code passing around. That was for our social media, not for donations. Alhamdulillah, we don't see donations right now, so very much appreciated.
Qualified it right now, huh?
Jazakallah khairan to ICHGB for hosting us. And insha'Allah, in the coming weeks or in the coming months, insha'Allah, we plan on having more in-person events. So we're not going to be all formal about it. If you guys have any suggestions, please reach out to myself, Ziyad, Rania, Yahya, and we can try and put something together, or reach out, insha'Allah, via Al-Arqam Institute. And with that, insha'Allah, we'll go ahead and conclude. We have some studies and sort of felt books out for purchase in case you don't already have them. But inshallah, with that, subhanahu wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا معصوما واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا مرحوما ولا تدع فينا بيننا شقيا ولا محروما والعصر ان الانسان لفي خسر الا الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق